I'm glad you're here. Before on my talks, I usually use a lot of slides and a lot of content, but my purpose here tonight is more you leave here with the desire to pray to the child Jesus. I think that's what we call contemplation. So we contemplate the mystery of the birth, the mystery of the incarnation, all that stuff that is he is mine personally, and I have this image of the child of Jesus because I have a strong devotion to him as a child. So I know Catholics have a strong devotion to Jesus on the cross, to Mary, and I always liked Jesus as a child. And tonight, basically, I want to explore this with you because it's almost unknown, this devotion among Catholics. But believe it or not, several saints have a very strong devotion to Jesus as a child, a relationship with Jesus as a child. One of the most famous saints is Saint Teresa of Lisieux, of the child Jesus. So she developed this relationship with God through being God as a child in this stage of life. That's very important to think about it because today there's this whole thing we have to be pro-life, like in the sense that like we have to speak the obvious to be pro-life and against abortion, right? Because people, they don't understand, which is very biological. Human beings, they develop in stages, right? People just think, oh, you become a human being after you leave the womb. If you go out there and read those things and watch what people are talking about, birth and conception, and it's scientifically, we all know when conception happens. And then after conception, the human being develops in stages. So that's scientific, proven, right? So, which means that most of the saints, and I like that too, we have a relationship with Jesus in that stage of life, being a child. I mean, we do not dismiss Jesus on the cross, Jesus in his time of his ministry, Jesus just being Jesus. But it's a very interesting, and that's my goal here tonight, for you to live here thinking about how it's possible to develop a relationship with God being like this, right? Because it's not something that I would say is easy, but for most of people it's easier on the cross, because most of us, we have sufferings in life, we just give our sufferings to God, to Jesus on the cross. But Jesus being a child, that's very difficult sometimes to relate with, because when you grow up, we become adults, we kind of lose that innocence and being like a naive, we just like don't relate anymore with Jesus being a child, or like we celebrate the Christmas, all the joy of Christmas, the songs in the radio all the time. So we get lost in this whole thing and we forgot. So basically tonight is going to be more a reflection, a conversation tone, and these things we should leave here like ruminate in ourselves, this relationship with God. So if you Google it, infancy of Jesus, and I have done in Portuguese, in English, in Spanish, in Italian, in French. There is not a lot out there about the infancy of Jesus and Jesus being a child. Actually, I have a book here by Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI. I mean, very good theology, as you know, Pope Benedict XVI. He's still alive. That's what he has for the infancy of Jesus. You see it? It's just, that's what he has. Pope Benedict XVI. It's a very good book, very nice book. It's a reflection on the two Gospels that speak on Jesus' infancy, Matthew and Luke. I like more, so I will explore more Luke today than Matthew. But just for you to have an idea, that's not a lot out there, even the church, because we know the birth of Jesus, the circumcision of Jesus, and then the temple when he was 12, and then he disappears from the Gospels, and then he shows up again, he's 30 years old. So there's nothing canonical written about it. However, if you do, that's more carefully, if you do a searching, I have found a lot, that's why I have this devotion, a lot on the saints, in spirituality. Because it's a hidden life, we don't know what happened, we only through prayer can kind of figure out what happened during those years. just Jesus being Jesus, Mary being Mary, and Joseph being Joseph. So we kind of, you have to get to a very transcendental, supernatural spirituality, and this relationship with the Holy Family to kind of to interact with them in this time that there was nothing written about their lives. So it's a very mystical approach, if you will. So that's why it's not, people just don't care, the majority of people. But the saints, they have those kinds of interactions. So tonight also you try to explore a little bit from what we have, and then we can pray and think about it, what happened. At the end of the day, we don't have to know what happened. It was just a regular family life. And to think about it as a family in first century Palestine. That's, if you want to go deeper on that, you just do a little research, historical, geographical, where they live. First of all, they're poor, extremely poor. I mean, to think about it, that how there is a book, actually it's not by a Christian, he's Hindu, he's an author. I mean, I read a lot of stuff out there just because I need to. I have to have contact with people talking about, even to compare with the faith. And it's very interesting. He has a book called, I don't remember the name of the author, but it's called The Third Jesus, which his thesis is there is the Jesus, which I don't agree. We don't agree as faith. We don't believe that. But it's interesting, the argument. So there is a Jesus in the first century, and there is a Jesus that was constructed, and especially through art, which is fine. That's why I brought those. I'm going to explain to you why I brought the two conceptions here. And there is the third Jesus, which he says is the real one. I don't see contradiction between the real Jesus and the Jesus. However, there are some mistakes here and there. People are human beings. And especially because in the medieval, in the time that people did not have access to written text and writing and reading, basically what you had was art. That's why we have the windows in the church. That's a little piece of sacred art. We have the stained glass windows because in Europe, people didn't know how to read and write. So they would look at the windows and know about the life of Jesus. You see that here. Usually the French churches, they have paintings like Holy Rosary, have that style. The old churches, always the sacred art in the church communicates the scripture or some mystery of a saint or something like that. So that was the purpose. But indeed, those artists, some of them, they have some faith, some of them they didn't. We have to make sure that there is that mystery between, there is that wedding, there's not a very good word, between humanity and divinity. Jesus is the Son of God, but he's also a child. So what research shows that the theology kind of put the infancy, just because we did not know, aside. That's for sure. So you don't have a lot of things out there. The other thing too, Jesus being a child doesn't attract us a lot, because human beings are usually more attracted to suffering than joy. That's psychologically. Even if you are sane, that's why even in America, why horror movies? Like, there's that side of human being that's kind of, I mean, I'm not saying it's the orderly way. We are all human beings falling by sin. That's why we have that attraction. But that's why they sell a lot. So usually, like, I'm talking about not people of faith. I'm talking about people that get attracted by those things. So usually, like today, sadly, dogs get more the cute thing than babies, right? But in general, we're more attracted in some sense to more the suffering Jesus, the whole blood. At least this generation that's very strong today. But even in the medieval, that's why people watched what the Inquisition did, the burning to the stake. So there was always that thing out there. So there was always more in the human side, more attraction to suffering than joy. So, and as I said, that contemplating this image is like, that's not very, let's put this in a dining room, looks very nice. So that was always our tendency. That's why people just escape it. There is more speculation out there than contemplation. When you go to the infancy of Jesus, as I said, people want to know what he did. He went to India. Like, there's a lot of things out there that people just make stories up about it. But I mean, at the end of the day, he lived in Galilee, and he was just a normal son of Mary and Joseph. But there's a lot of, if you research, there's a lot of speculation outside of the church about what he did. And at the end of the day, it's not our purpose to know. That's more like, I don't know, it's the person who wants to know about other people's business. Like, it's more that thing, like what he did. Like, so that's not should be our approach to Jesus, really. It's more, we should approach Jesus being an infant more as contemplation. Let me watch your life, what you do, so I can become like you. So that should be more our approach and position to Jesus, instead of trying to know what he did until he was 30 years old. I mean, but as actually is not what you find out there. You find out there are more people trying to know what he did or he had done, and than just sitting and praying and contemplating and try to become like him. So that's more what you found out there. So as I said, the child Jesus, the infancy of Jesus, is this combination between humanity and divinity. We see more there on the cross because he's risen. But I mean, the two events that marks our faith is his birth and his resurrection. I think that's what defines our Christian faith mostly, that God, and that's very interesting, that becomes very theological, the incarnation. God becomes man is the first event, and then Jesus is risen. So the Son of God is not really only Jesus and Christ, but it is God. God is in, because Jesus is God. So it's the incarnation of God. And that's very interesting because the pagan religions, and you know this by Greeks and Romans, the gods, they have interactions with you. You know this through mythology, right? They had interactions and they produced like semi-gods and things like that, but was one nature, was never this descending. So if you read Greek mythology, the gods, they'll come to earth, make children, like make children, get up to the Olymp, whatever. But there was never this. And the pagan gods, he was on earth with us. He assumed our humanity. And with Jesus, we see that a God that assumes 100%, but not sin, of course, he's God, our humanity. So that's the novelty of Christianity in the society, in the world, because he assumed completely our things. So we should keep that in mind, and that's why I brought those two paintings. I mean, I don't remember who painted that, but that's Leonardo da Vinci. As you see here, there's a drawing, and it's the same thing. However, here you have Elizabeth and Mary, and there we have Mary and Joseph. But both of them are two big figures during Advent. Jesus and John the Baptist were cousins. Both of them, they reveal something very interesting. The one we have there is more like a European conversion of the life. It's interesting. I have a collection of those paintings from the medieval. Mary was reading. Have you seen the Annunciation? And Mary was reading. There is one painting that Mary is praying the Rosary, which is just very interesting. Mary is saying the Hail Mary, or something very. But I mean, they have paintings right. It's just. But yeah, there's painting out there that Mary is praying the Rosary when the angel gets there. So it's just praying in advance what the angel is gonna tell her. But anyways, so that's more like European style. They're all dressed. They're probably not dressed like this in the first century Palestine. But that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be realistic. It's just expressing a mystery. That's the purpose of art. Also, I like this Da Vinci because it's just the drawing. But you see the same interaction. But I mean, you're not going to be lingering in art, even though I love be lingering in front of a painting and thinking about it. What was in the mind of the artist to paint that? But here is a very a raw thing, because it's just a drawing. But I mean, there's this interaction with Mary and Elizabeth. I mean, and I do pray. When I see something like that, I do pray. I mean, remember that when the Annunciation happened, the angel said Elizabeth has conceived. There was this whole two women who are embraced by the will of God, was captured but encapsulated by the will of God. And you see those two women interacting, and then they have their children in front of them. And I am sure that if you are a mother, you relate more than I try to get that mystery of maternity that is happening between these two women, right? And they like looking at each other, and they know for sure that God has done wonderful things for them. And then you see their children, and like Mary know that her children, her child is Jesus. It's a lot going on to that. That's when I speak about contemplation more than speculation. Towards the infancy of Jesus. And I mean, as I said, if you're a parent, you can go deeper on that. I'm still developing my fatherhood. We had a workshop in the seminary, and there was a priest. He was probably in his 60s, and he said he realized when he was indeed a father when he was like 40 years old, being a priest. He was in his 40s, and it was very interesting to me, to us. We are all seminarians. Because we think that, I didn't think that, but some of us, we think that ordination, so I was ordained 5 months ago, right? So we think like after ordination, this whole father thing just happened. And that's the problem with the same thing with the infancy of Jesus, with anything in the church. We think the sacraments are magical. When I gave the talk on Mary, I explained about superstition, right? So we think that's just magic. So the oil, the magic is not happening. It's just the power of the sacrament. And grace and ours work, we have to work hand in hand together. But some of us, we think that that's going to happen. But indeed, the incarnation of Jesus shows that we have the divinity and the humanity part. We have the human part. So, and also, if we're a father, and I have been reading a lot about fatherhood, because there's a lot of priests who write about it, how to become a father, because people call me father. Someone in their 90s, 80s call me father, and it's very, and everywhere I did, this is recording, I don't like things were recorded because I cannot share everything about my life, but when I was going there anyway, you know how by preaching, I just disclose myself to my parish. When I did a procedure that some of you didn't know, I don't know if you're on Facebook, I did like an exam to see if there were aneurysms in my brain, to check that. And so I had a history in my family. I was having headaches, and the doc let us check and this and that. So, and the funny thing was when I did that in the UMass in Worcester, right? So when I got there, and I mean it's an invasive, you have to wear the little dress, and you have to tie behind this whole thing that I'm not kind of used to, just being like undressed and this little dress thing, and the nurse tying behind me. So this whole thing, and I'm fine. But she was calling me father. I was like, and there's a father, like, let me help you, father. And there you go. And and I get to the room of the procedure, and they're like nurses, and oh, father, good morning, father. So that, you know what I mean? That's in 5 months, like 5 months. So you see like this crew of doctors and things calling you father. Just by it is beautiful, but could be overwhelming in some sense that, and I was just praying like, it's the same, I'm sure it's the same thing with a parent. And some of the parents, they have their parents to help them. Some of them, they don't. They just figure out and how to be a father, how to be a mother. And it's the same thing. You have to collaborate. Usually the perfection in marriage, that the father kind of helps the mother. And sometimes we get that help. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have to make a judgment call. And I'm sure you have to do the same with your children. I mean, you kind of know you were supposed to do, but you cannot do it right away. You have to do something. And that the same thing happens in the priesthood. You have to do something. You don't have time to think about it. You have to save the person. It's the same thing. You have to save the child from harm. And that should be and I mean, I'm just guessing. I don't think it happens automatically in the child. However, should be an instinct there. And that's why I pray every day to get that instinct. That naturally is more like present in the female. You see, even in the animals, like the mother, when like everybody talks about the bear. Don't get near like a mother, like when they have the little bears. Don't get near them, because there is something that in nature. where is the father of the bear? He's somewhere. It's kind of the same thing with human beings. But I ask the same thing for God, to have that instinct, like I have to save the person from harm. And that harm is physically, it could be physical, but it's also with us spiritually. It's spiritually a lot. And that's what, looking at this little baby, we go back. At the end, that's what I was going to say at the end. The child Jesus makes us to go back to our roots, to where you came from. That's why the Gospel of Matthew, and you're going to read that on this Sunday, it starts with the genealogy. Because, and even the Pope Benedict of the 16th, his first chapter is in the infancy of Jesus. He says, where do you come from? Where do you come from? Because the child Jesus reminds us that if we forget that place, everything else is going to fall apart. Everything else in your mission, and that's why it's a big job being a parent, because I know parents get desperate because my children don't go to church and things like that. I don't know if I do the right thing, but I always say, but have you planted the seed? I think that's the big mission for a parent. Have you planted the seed? Have you showed the way? Yeah, so yeah, now it's just on them, indeed. But I mean, it's kind of the job. It's the same thing that I do. I preach. My children are going to follow my preaching. I don't know. It's just that's what are what Jesus says in the gospel. He's just spreading the seeds, right? Some of them in the rock, some of them in the good soil. But the mission is spreading the seeds and keep going. A lot of parents, they come to me and say, oh, should I keep insisting? And I said, yes, I think that's the calling. And there's a parent that, a Brazilian mother came to me and said, Father, I'm not even calling my child to go to Mass anymore. I said, don't do that. I mean, still call. I mean, that's your mission, at least to invite. I mean, can you imagine if just the mother gives up, like, inviting? I mean, who's going to do that, right? As I said, it is a very challenging and difficult, but at least invite. So you kind of accomplish your mission of inviting. And I was like desperate, said, don't do that. Because you are the mother. At least you invite. You are the mother. So, sorry. So, and she kind of said, yeah, I'm going to do this. Because, I mean, she was not pleased with the answer. So that's why it's very challenging. Family dynamics are very difficult, though, nowadays. So it's not easy to raise a child. That's why they go to the farms, they go to the homeschooling, because it's becoming tough and tough and tough. But in a sense that, but yeah, so is I completely lost my thoughts in the child of Jesus. But but it's just this going back to the roots. So the first question as I already said, where are you from? I mean, I get that question all the time. And I really relate to that, and I try to incorporate that in my life here. This week I heard something very interesting. Someone told me that I'm sure my of course my style and the things I preach and say, sounds to you different, because my experience growing up and being Catholic in Brazil is different. So, and the person said, oh, you bring always a different perspective, in the sense that that's normal and natural because I was raised in a different environment. So usually even my style of preaching and explaining things, and also because English is my second language, so I think in a different way. I'm glad you understand what I'm saying, but I think in a different way. However, I get this as a compliment, because as I said, I want to become a citizen of the United States of America, but also I cannot forget where I came from, because was there that God called me. God called me there, not here. So, and I think that should be also our experience. Where did you go? Where you were when God called you to be here tonight. That's I think that's the experience. And the infancy of Jesus being a child, he was born in Bethlehem. The Gospels are very specific. If you're born there, you're from there. And that's the thing, I love being here. And I often, if you read my interview in the Catholic Free Press, I call the United States home. Because people say, like, when are you going home? I said, my parents live in Brazil, I live in Gardner. That's my address, that's my home. but I get what people say, what people mean. But I don't forget where God called, the place, the environment, because that thing should stay with us, because we carry those things. And some of them, I know I get it. Some of these experiences could bring a lot of joy or a lot of suffering as well. But it's a healing, my point is a healing experience, because it's your roots. I mean, your parents. If you came from a beautiful Catholic family, loving parents, God bless you. But if you didn't, this is also a healing experience. From there, God saved you. From there, God called you. From that place. So my purpose tonight is just leave you with those insights and thoughts. So the birth of Jesus and the infancy of Jesus leaves us with something also very interesting. Jesus is a historical person. I mean, we take for granted he's God, and he's God, but he's historical. He was born. So Mary was like pregnant. This whole thing about people raise about Mary is just for me, and I'm not a woman, I'm not a mother, but it's just, I mean, think about it. So she conceived. She had a different experience. She conceived from the Holy Spirit. That's the only detail with Mary, right? She just conceived from the Holy Spirit, not from Joseph. But besides the conception from the Holy Spirit, she conceived and she bare a child. So the whole, biology and science fascinates me, because reveals all the time when you read anatomy or anything, you see how God is perfect, right? And how everything in our body works perfectly. So the whole, as I said in the beginning, the whole development of a child happened within Mary. A development of the Son of God. And sometimes we just get that for granted. I contemplate that. I pray with that. I pray about like this little God. Can you imagine? It's just unthinkable God that's developed in the womb. And I'm saying that trying to get a little closer to the experience that is given to a female. Right? Because I always ask, you have no idea. I usually do this with Brazilians, Americans. I have not had the courage yet. But when I met a pregnant woman, Brazilian, I asked how many weeks, what are you feeling? And when I was very young, I said, do you feel something? Oh, sure, I do. And how you sleep? And when you sleep, he moves. I ask all those kinds of questions. Yeah, I don't know about America. Everybody's gonna know, but I don't know, because a person could be uncomfortable. With my people, I know they are not. So that's why I ask those questions right away. I will do dinner, we're having dinner. How's he sleeping? He moves. So I love that, because I pray about it. I pray with it. I mean, I said, no, I'm not sleeping. My sister said, after you become a mother, you never sleep. You never sleep again. And probably that's true. I mean, you sleep until you become a mother. After you become a mother, you never sleep, because you during the pregnancy, and after you just get worried about, where's my son? And even if he's in college, he's somewhere, there is this kind of, and there's this thing about females that they sense things. It's just it's in their nature. And mothers, they have that, right? And she said, Thiago, after you become a mother, you never sleep. You don't sleep like a deep sleep. Even though I have met women say, oh no, I have no problem with that. I sleep very well. So anyway, also, as I said, contemplating the infancy of Jesus, we contemplate not a divine person, not a human person, but a divine person developing. Blood. There's a whole thing in the seminary that to discuss. I mean, the blood of Jesus is in heaven in his body, right? His risen body and soul as God. But what is the blood that runs in Jesus' veins? It's also the blood. Have you think about that? I mean, it's the blood of Mary. I mean, it's his body. He has, of course, I mean, there's a whole theological, he has a different body, a transfigured body in heaven. But I mean, he has a body. That's what we believe. And Mary is also in body and soul. If we cannot deny they are mother and son, so the same blood. So there's a lot of things out there, reflections and prayer about that. Some people like to pray with that stuff, but it's just it is Mary's blood, because that's the thing. That's what the church wants to avoid. I mean, this whole thing. Oh, it's only God, only human. No, it's both. And he has a body. He has everything that a body has. So we should keep that in mind. So that basically everything what encapsulates this is the incarnation. And there is a father of the church he says we cannot redeemed or we was not assumed. So he assumed the whole humanity, the body and everything, and he died so he can redeem the human beings, the humanity. So he assumed everything, but not sin, of course, to redeem as well. So which means he assumed every single thing, but not sin. Pope Benedict XVI, he speaks about the Magi, the wise men, how you would call, and he brings a very interesting reflection. First, it's interesting. There is an interaction. They represent other religions, other peoples, but he says something very interesting. Even if you are in a true religion and you have seen that. Like I'm not about Christianity. Magi, they represent people outside of Christianity. If you follow the path of right path, you're gonna find Christianity at some point. That's basically the point of the Benedict XVI. So they are seeking the star. So some of them, they say they knew astrology because they're following the star or something like that. And there's a lot of theories. More theory and speculation than truth. But so the point is they're following the star. So they're following what they knew about astrology. So let us take astrology, and then they found Jesus. So it's a very interesting point. And so if you're authentic of what you believe, even though it's not Christ, you're gonna find Christ. You're gonna find Christ. It's a very interesting point because they follow what they knew, the star. They have no idea who Jesus was, right? So, but they felt in their heart they have to. And I have the gifts here, the samples of the gifts. So they're finding this following the star. Then they found Jesus on the crib. It's a very interesting point. But my point here also is this interaction. The child Jesus is a figure that interacts with other peoples, with people with diversity, who has this dialogue. That's also part of our theology. Sometimes not pleasant to hear, but we should have some interactions with the diversity, with people that's at least is the message of the council in some sense that at least, and that I do a lot in the sense that I try to know what they're reading, and I try to know what they are saying about Jesus, just to have a conversation, and then we'll go from there. But at least to have this kind of interaction with them, and we're called to do that. So the relationship with the child Jesus, the baby Jesus, how it's called, could be very challenging because I speak in the beginning about the cross. We relate more with the cross, we're suffering, we carry our own crosses, the problems and things. But not comparing to the children of today's age because they have everything, but a child is very dependent. And that's we don't like that image. We don't like that relationship to be dependent on God. Especially Americans. Americans are very, and I can speak from my place because I was not born here. So, and also because America has been blessed with development, technology, wealth. Because I came from a country less developed than America. For us, it's easy to grasp being dependent of God, because certain things you just don't have. The only thing you have is God, right? In America, it's kind of difficult, that kind of message, because almost everything is there, right there. So so that message for us, for some of our brothers and sisters, years, that's not my thing. And so that's why, and you see here, it's a baby, right? It needs help for everything, it needs care. And usually it's not a relationship when you come to church. I preached the other day to a Brazilian community, saying that we come to church looking for something else, but not like being church, which could be a lot of things. You could be to come to worship God, so it's something that I give to Him, right? I can come to worship as a congregation, as a family, a lot of names and pictures of the Mass. Let us just work with the Mass, right? But if you are being churchy, it's something that you give. It's always about give. But the movement today is reverse. So I'm not feeling well. So I'm trying to find peace. I'm going to church. I said, you're not going to find peace in church. Especially sometimes are you surprised? In the sense that we have this movement that I go to church to be served, right? To be a consumer. And that's not the God's relationship. Because if you have that relationship with God, that's going to be challenging for you, because sometimes God's not going to give you anything. We call in spirituality consolation. We call consolation. So is the thing when we pray, I don't feel anything? Is that thing? Right? Are you confused? Probably, right? Because, probably. Why? Because that's the mentality. I go to receive. Oh, I give my envelope every week. I should receive something. Right? My pew should be very comfortable because I support the church. Right? Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's not the pure movement of worshiping God. And I'm not criticizing who go to church to find it. I'm just saying that there's sometimes that you are not going to get it. You're not going to get it. And that goes back to a child relationship as well. The child relationship is good, but you know, as if you're a parent or if you have grandchildren, they want, and sometimes you give, sometimes you don't. And God is a father. Don't forget that. God is a father. So sometimes you go to church to find peace, and you are not going to find peace because it's going to be somebody crying, a baby crying behind you. And then what happened? Your day just ruined. And oh my goodness, I went to church to find peace and I was very aggravated. So my point is not criticizing this, is that if God has been good to you and had given you always the time you ask, good for you, give me the secret. Sometimes I have asked God several things and they said, no, that's not happening. That's not happening. That's and indeed, my purpose here is challenge your faith. That's my purpose as a priest. Because I'm saying that God sometimes is going to give, but sometimes He's not going to give. And if you didn't know that by now, in your life being a Christian, that's very concerning to me. Because our life, our Christianity, it is like that. That's why I preached also, explained the Advent wreath. So we have the purple and we have the pink. That's sometimes kind of our lives. Have purple. Some people have purple for 60 plus years, but and less pink than purple. But is that also it could be a symbolic thing that we have a joy in the middle of the sacrifice, in the middle of the purple season, right? It's the same thing with our life. So, but my point is dependent. So I need God, but I'm not like demanding like a child in some sense. So I want this, I want that. It is said to me that the church is becoming very demanding with God. Like, it's more like a God who serves me than I serve God, which has never been the understanding in Scripture. Always we serve God. I come to church not, and that's the thing, because even outside of religion, you feel more fulfilled when you help somebody. We see a lot of people who help people, they're not religious. And why they do that? Because it's fulfilling. When you give, right? When you live the experience of giving instead of receiving. The receiving is more as a consequence. And sometimes you do more give and you receive less. But the giving experience is more fulfilling. So that should be the more our church relationship in some sense. I mean, this talk is going to several ways that I have to do I prepare talk, but that's just I'm just saying that we are in that position that we come to worship the Lord, and that's why also, and it's a totally different point, but that's why also sometimes when something is not good in church, it doesn't bother me. In a sense, like let us say, and I'm not talking about, I'm going to explain that, I'm going to elaborate that a little bit. And again, don't get me wrong, give the people online, record it, whatever. I'm not talking about the parish, but the church in general. That's a level of thing that, for example, I go to mass and the music is not good, right? Let us say that, like, music is not good. Again, I'm not talking about the parish, but I go to a mass, whatever, in New Hampshire. The music is supposed to help you to pray, but it was not good. But I mean, it becomes irrelevant, because I was not going to mass as I was going to a concert, right? Should not be the main goal. So of course the music helps. I still love you, God. Let us say the priest. The priest sometimes he's not a good preacher. And preaching is a gift, right? You all know, as singing as a gift. Some priests are wonderful confessors. They're not good preachers. It's just like priests are more good like one-by-one relationship, but like in public, have a hard time speaking in public. That's part of human nature, reality. Some priests are gifted in other ways, right? Oh, the preachers are not good. The mass was awful. If you are, of course, if you're to a mass, going to mass, specifically looking for a public speaking thing, you're going to be very frustrated. My point is, it's just we should rearrange those things. And again, my purpose here and tonight is just to leave you thinking, to question your faith. And I did that with the Eucharist ministers and the lectors when I met with them. Why do you do this? Right? Why do you serve the Lord? Question yourself. And in some sense, like, shake that. Why do I do that? Because when you make that question, no matter who is in charge, no matter if that person is not in a good mood, and say you something before you read, do you know what I mean? It's just those little things, they become irrelevant, because you know why you're there. You're there for the Lord. You're there because you love the Lord. You are there to repay what the Lord has done to you. I don't know what is your experience to be in that position. That's why in the other sense also, we don't wait for a thank you. Sometimes you get a thank you, sometimes you don't, right? But you're not supposed to be there waiting. Of course, it's very nice if you receive a thank you, right? It's always gratitude. It's always good, but it's being a child. I mean, and now I'm working with at the school. And you see that a lot. You do things for them and sometimes they just ignore you. Like things like that, right? They just, because they're children. They don't have this, they still develop that thing, and you should be that in pace too. So being a child reminds us, going back to the essentials. The child doesn't seek, even though some do, but doesn't seek to be recognized. He's just the child is just there. The little child is just there to help. And it's just awesome when you work with them. When I preach the school mass, you have seen, I love the first graders because they participate, right? When I ask a question, they just raise their hands. They have no idea, and some of them, they don't know the answer, but they just jumped, right? That should be us with God. I just go. And that's how you don't doubt about the plan of God in your life. You just go. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the answer. And the beautiful thing is sometimes the answer is wrong. The answer is wrong, but God, and I try to smile, I said, no, right, it's not quite there. Like you try to manage that. So being a little child. And the infancy, as I said in the beginning, is this time of being with God. I mean, and one thing that I was praying about it tonight, especially, and it came to my mind. I started with this speaking about the poverty being in a holy family. Jesus is a very psychological insight. He's very resilient. Resilience. You know what resilience means? This capacity. Because I was reading the text and where he was born, the hell, and that could speak to a lot of Americans, because especially when I say speak to Americans, I'm not criticizing the country. I love being here. It's just because it's our culture, being material, consuming. Actually, the advertising of this tonight was like, get away from all those things, which they could be good. I mean, decorating the house, buying the gifts, wrapping the gift, that's beautiful. But that's not the essential, right? We're celebrating a birthday in the sense that, and who is the person? So, I was thinking about Jesus, and this child gets lost in the temple of Jerusalem. Like crazy things are the mind of a priest. In the sense, I was thinking, as a very strong child, and to work with his father. So I ask you, at least tonight, you're gonna leave tonight here with a lot of questions, and I hope I didn't bring a lot of polemics to the table, but that's my purpose as well as a priest. And even if I get corrected, it's just to dive in, go beyond. So And that's much more my personality than my priesthood. If everybody is going to the cross, and I do love the cross, I mean, embracing Jesus as a crucified, go to the child. Go the other way. Try to contemplate him, and especially this time of season of the church. Him as and the experience of the saints, and I go back to my point of being church, is more than receiving from him. You take care of him. Right? So instead of going, God, I'm going through a lot of things in my life, save me. You save him. Take care of him. You, it's your turn. I preached last weekend. I said, now is your turn to say, I love you, Jesus. Because I'm sure he has loved you many times in your life. And when I say that, I mean anything. Because I'm very spiritual in the sense that God speaks through different channels all the time. Someone who brings you food to the rectory. Someone who said, Father, I don't know, an email, a card. I'm getting cards, Christmas cards. This time, right? And sometimes I don't reply them, but because I get a lot. Sometimes you have one priest, I have 1,000 people. But I do stop and read and pray. And I mean, being honest on camera, sometimes you need that sentence on a day. We are all human beings, right? You receive a card and say, thank you, Father Thiago, for, right? It's not something like enhances your ego. It has nothing to do with that. Sometimes you are just going through something. I'm a man, I have a family, I love my country. You just like take for granted. A lot of things, he's a priest, whatever. And the grace of God is going to help him. But God uses us all the time, use me and you. And so sometimes I'm going to get the card in a time that I'm doubting, I'm just sad about something. And I open that card and my priesthood is in flames again. Because I did something, not myself, of course, but I think you will follow me, what I'm saying, right? In some sense that God works all the time through those little things. And that's why we have to come back to the essentials, to the child. So, but this time, instead of receiving that, which is always good, receiving those kinds of consolation, let us take care of the baby. Let us invite Jesus to stay with us. We are very good celebrating birthdays. A lot of theologians and priests, they don't like saying let us sing happy birthday to Jesus. I get it. I get it. I get the whole theology. However, putting theology aside, in a very human level, we do a lot of wonderful things when we're celebrating someone's birthday, right? Regardless if Jesus was born December 25 or not, 25th or not, whatever, we're celebrating his birthday. Right? We go to a nice dinner, ale house, whatever. And a lot of people celebrating birthdays. And sometimes, I hope it's not our case, but sometimes people just forget the birthday boy. In the sense that, let us do everything, exchange the gifts, like call Santa. And, say our Father, Hail Mary, some saints would say, happy birthday. Is there any harm to Jesus? I don't think so. Personally, thank you for your incarnation. Thank you for being my family. Thank you for giving me the chance to know who you are. Say that to him on Christmas. Right? I think that's we should never forget. And regardless if he was born or not, that's the day. That's the day you remember. That's the day you celebrate. That's why we do these wonderful things, wonderful dinners, lunch. I don't know what you do to celebrate that, but celebrate that. Celebrate that you're watching me in some way. If you bring your son to have a nice dinner or restaurant, I'm not bringing him to the house. But what I usually do, I light a candle, a little candle. Not this one, that's fake, but go to Walgreens. I saw this week Walgreens, those little roses, and it says in the thing that stays for 1 year. I don't think so, but go to Walgreens and I'm gonna bring this rose to Jesus. Sounds silly, maybe, right? But God knows what is in your heart. And that's little thing, offering a rose to this little image of the babe Jesus, if you have it, and I hope you have it. Whatever is this, he's sitting, is very outgoing. But if you have laying down on a crib or anything, do something. Stop it. Pray. Say a prayer. Give your ear. Give him the year of 2023 to him, to his care. Jesus, I'm taking care of you. Take care of my ear, my family. Have a conversation. Have a relationship. It helps you. And I think that's the purpose of tonight. I hope you leave here thinking about, and all of you who watched, as I have been preaching, I want you to feel the same thing that I feel when I talk about Jesus. Because it's not about only the celebration of Christmas, it's about a person, a relationship with a person. Fall in love with a person of Jesus Christ. If you do that, you're going to leave your country, leave your family behind, even though you miss them, you love them, you wish to be with them this time of the year. But because you are so passionate about this man, you leave that behind and be with the people who reflect this man in their faces. That should be our prayer. Fall in love with them. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much for coming. Thank you.